Good morning. I'm delighted to be able to be with you this morning. I have been asked to speak for about 10 minutes, and my topic is developing accessible materials for online courses. This pandemic has brought into focus two very important issues that we as educators face. We always have issues about these things, but the pandemic has shown them bigger, harder to deal with. And these two important issues, one is the word equity. Equity means giving a fair and equal opportunity for all groups. It's not really equitable if we say here is an educational opportunity. Anybody who can get there and take advantage of it, you can have it. That doesn't give equal opportunity for all groups. And issues of equity exist in all educational systems around the world. These may be based on economics, on language background, on ethnic background, but there are issues of equity. We want to be fair and equal for all students. And very often, issues of equity or lack of equity show up in the question of accessibility. Accessibility is the ability to get and use needed resources. So when we move our courses online, we have to think, are we being equitable? Are we doing all we can to provide equal access for all of our students? Now, when we measure accessibility, it gets measured in many different ways. One is cost. It's not equitable to require things that most of our students can't afford, or maybe only some of our students cannot afford. There are wonderful textbooks, supplementary materials, apps, and technology that would be useful for our students. But if some of our students or their families cannot afford it, that's not equitable. You might know that here in the United States, the word accessibility is used for inexpensive. You'll see advertisements that say, would you like a more accessible version? What they mean is a less expensive version. A second way that we can talk about accessibility is the ease of locating resources. Sometimes the resources are available, but it's just not as easy for some students to find them as for others. This happens often with books. There are libraries and bookstores in big cities, not always so in small towns and villages. Transportation to the bookstore may be very expensive. The worst example of this I know of ever in my life, I was teaching in a country where there were very few bookstores. No one had credit cards, and the online companies did not do business with this country. And my students came in one morning just furious because the professor in the previous class had told them that there was a book that they must read. And they said, this book is not available in our country. And he said, that doesn't matter. That's your problem. You have to read it. Very inaccessible resource. Another way we can measure accessibility is with meeting individual needs. Some of our students have particular needs. They may have vision problems or even be blind. They may have hearing problems. They may have some other things that we as teachers haven't thought about very much. Some learners are more easily distracted than others. Some students experience more anxiety. And now that we're teaching so much online and electronically, these issues may become even bigger for some of our students. If you haven't done it, go do a web search and look for things like Microsoft accessibility tools or Google accessibility. You will find that there are tools, programs online to help our students as they try to learn, both if they have things like physical or visual disabilities, and if they have problems with anxiety or depression or easily distracted. And we as teachers often haven't thought about how to provide for these students, and many students do not know that there are computer tools to help them while they're reading computer pages. And then, of course, accessibility can be measured in terms of the technology and devices that are needed. If you teach in a technology university, it's quite likely that every one of your students has a computer, an iPad, and a smartphone. But in many families, this is not true. Here in the United States, we're a fairly technologically advanced nation, but many families do not have computers, and certainly many families do not have one computer or even one smartphone for every child in the family. So we need to think about how accessible our courses are in terms of technology. No one in the world has solved all these problems. Educators everywhere are working. Well, maybe one good thing out of this pandemic is that we're all trying around the world to share our ideas with each other on how to solve these problems. I certainly don't know all the answers, but I will here in these few minutes give you 3 principles that you can consider each time you make an assignment. The first principle is try to use the technology your students already have. Some of them may have computers. Great. If they don't, do they have phones? There are schools here in the United States where they decided that some of their students just can't do electronic online learning. And they copy the materials. The students come to the school once a week and pick them up. So it may not be possible to use technology. But it's also possible that your students can use something like a phone message service. These seem to be more available um, for many students. They may not have a lot of data. You may need to make the things that you ask them to download smaller, but you can send things through messenger services. One thing to do is if videos, which are wonderful, are going to use too much data, maybe you can make a written script available also. And if you're sending PowerPoints or doing PowerPoints online, there's a function on PowerPoint that will create a handout so that you can send it as an attachment that uses much less data. We try to put 2 pages on one to reduce the data load. Another principle is allow for asynchronous work. I see many webinars on how to create wonderful Zoom classes, online classes, using interesting apps and breakout rooms and many things to keep the class engaging. They're wonderful if your students can do it. However, your students may not have bandwidth to do it. They may also have weak internet service. As I said, we're technologically advanced here, and yet many of our students do not have reliable internet at home. And there's also the question of power outages. Power can go out for a few hours or sometimes for a few days, depending on the weather. So we need to allow an option. If you're asking students to attend a Zoom meeting, maybe you can record it so that they can listen to it later. If you are providing online PowerPoints, print them off so they can do them at a different time. Always try to find a way that students can do things at a different time if they need to. And then provide multiple ways to complete assignments, including some low-tech options. That example of watching a video, if you'd like to have them join in a video discussion, wonderful. If they can't, maybe they can watch the video and send their written comments. If they can't access online, perhaps they can send things to you on a message service. I've heard teachers say that they've been sending out homework assignments on a message service on the phone, and the students, one student does it, shares it with all of the students, and they all turn in the homework and only one person did it. I thought perhaps one way you could avoid that is put them in pairs. Each student draw a picture, take a photo, send it to their partner, and their partner writes a description of the photo. And then takes a picture of that description, and they send both documents to you as the teacher. That would keep them from all doing the same work. And that thing of take a photo and send it in is often a good alternative for students who can't do online work. So my time is running out. I haven't given you grand ideas for things you can do in a live or Zoom classroom. Here are 2 webinars that have excellent ideas. I hope you'll be able to watch them. I hope you'll be able to use them. They're available at americanenglish.state.gov and on YouTube. But if you can't do these things, please remember these 3 principles. To try to use the technology your students already have, allow for asynchronous work, and allow low-tech options, multiple ways to share, do the assignments. And now you see me stuttering because I can't tell how to turn off my recording. I'm sorry. Here, I can stop recording.